Information, news, and entertainment on demand.
WSRadio.com. Welcome to This Week in Marketing, brought to you by the San Diego chapter of the American Marketing Association.
Good morning, San Diego marketers. You're listening to another episode of This Week in Marketing, brought to you by the American Marketing Association San Diego chapter, and as always, powered by WS Radio. In the studio today, I've got Sam Wheeler, and we're talking all about the 2020 May Google update. So before we dive into it, just got a quick announcement here. First of all, I want to thank everyone for attending the webinar powered by Tragic Media. We got a really good turnout and a lot of really good tidbits in that one. We're still planning out our next set of webinars, so be sure to stay tuned, take a look at the website, and as always, check your emails for those invitations. And so Sam, I think I have Sam on the line. Do you hear me today? How you doing?
Yeah. Hey, Kevin. Pretty good. Thanks for having me. I do want to point out that the Cause conference has been postponed, as most of our listeners know. Yes. But we do have a webinar series that we're launching, and our first webinar in the Cause conference webinar series is June 3rd at 10 a.m. And we have a really awesome topic. It's about succeeding in your philanthropy and fundraising mission now that the world is reopening. So we have two awesome speakers, and the title is From Survive to Thrive: Accelerate Your Impact as the World Reopens. So should be really great. We have two awesome speakers. We have Cindy Fallon and Cameron Ripley, and they're both awesome San Diego cause-focused supporters. And we can hear more about them on June 3rd. So tune in. It's going to be pretty cool event.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a good topic. While we're touching up while we're still doing this remote, have you seen any good brand messaging related to the pandemic recently?
I saw. So one thing that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit today is the fact that on Google, Facebook, almost all of the push marketing, you can't advertise for COVID-related stuff, right? Like face masks, hand sanitizer. There's a ton of price gouging going on. So I think it was called Public Goods, which is a company that sells basic soap and toilet paper, basically non-branded type of stuff. And they had a really awesome ad to get around advertising for hand sanitizers and face masks and stuff. They just bleeped out the words in their ad like it was a swear word or something. It was pretty funny. It was like, we wanted to let you know that we've always had blank sanitizer. And they you could barely make the word out at the very end. And we can't advertise blank because of the price gougers. F you, price gougers. Yeah. It was a pretty good ad, and it got around, the bots that, don't let you do your push marketing and that stuff. So
nice. That's awesome. Yeah, it's weird to think that there's you go into the grocery store where, 2.5 months into this pandemic, and, the TP and hand sanitizer is just as barren as it was 2 months ago. It's like,
very odd.
What are these people doing with all this toilet paper? It's like people just have garages full of these.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very weird.
And the price gouging is still going on. I don't know. There's a liquor store down the street from us. They're selling single rolls of TP for $3 a pop. It's like, come on. Anyway, I think one of the things I really like seeing right now is that this whole "we're in this together" messaging is starting to finally go away. I don't know. First of all, how have we not talked about this? I don't know if you remember a couple months ago. Who's that celebrity who did? She was Wonder Woman. What's her name? She's Israeli girl. But she did
Gal
Gadot. Yeah, Wonder Woman. Yeah. She did a video. It was they covered John Lennon's Imagine, and it was just a bunch of celebrities singing a verse, and it was supposed to be really heartfelt. And with the message, we're all in this together. And meanwhile, they're doing it from, their Calabasas mansions. And I don't know. I think that was the moment. I remember seeing that cringe video, and that was like, okay, we are definitely not all in this together.
Yeah, it's people are definitely experiencing the pandemic differently. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if you saw Weird Al and a bunch of other comedians did like a parody video of the Imagine. It was pretty good. It was it ended with Weird Al being like, "And remember, we're all in this together." And then he like pans the camera over his view from like the back deck of his mansion into like this, gorgeous little ravine. It was pretty good.
Nice.
Anyway, okay, so to dive into our topic today, we are talking all about the Google Core algorithm update of 2020. There's been 2 of them so far. The first one coming back in January, and we recently got our May update a couple weeks ago. And yeah, it was interesting. It's interesting to think, back in January how different life was, and back in January the update did very similar to what most of the core updates do. A lot of the sites that we saw got hit were, as always, in the your money, your life industry, health, personal care, law, and finance, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the most interesting thing about this May update 2 months later is that, obviously the YMYL verticals were hit, but this one seemed a lot more broad across the board. We saw some of the biggest sites that got hit were Spotify, Discogs, a bunch of news sites. The Lonely Planet was a big one that got hit, Huffington Post. And we also saw a lot of finance sites like NASDAQ got hit, Spend with Pennies got hit. Even the CDC website got hit. Obviously, those are health and finance related websites. But I think a big takeaway when you look at the websites that got hit was a ton of news sites just really, really took nasty hits in their rankings. And my thoughts on this are, the COVID-19 pandemic hit and people are stuck in their house. And what do people in the 21st century do when they're stuck at home and they can't go out? What are they doing? They're staring at their phones, staring at their computers. And, we saw just a huge, huge change in internet behavior, which, really formed the basis for this update, in my opinion. For example, we saw huge traffic declines in verticals like, obviously travel was a big one, real estate took a hit, manufacturing. But then on the other hand, we saw a lot of verticals like media, news, food-related stuff, healthcare. Those took huge, huge rises in traffic. And also entertainment obviously took a very, very big spike in traffic. And my thoughts on this update are, okay, there's a huge change in search behavior to favor sites like entertainment, news, health-related sites. So now Google's got to come down and really make sure providing the good content due to the big spike in traffic. Those are my initial thoughts on it. Sam, I'm interested to get yours.
You kind of had a pretty good overview of what the update was about. One of the things that I think Google is constantly trying to understand is making sure that they're giving the right answer to a given query, right? And a lot of the big sites that were hit, in a lot of cases, from what I'm reading at least, it's like, the thin content or pages that have a login wall, stuff that is, more winning in search because of the domain authority factors, not necessarily the page factor, right? So it's like this page looks to be really strong because the domain authority is so big, but really there's no content on the site has no links. It's not really a good page, but because it's from a big brand, from the search engine, it could be looked at as strong, right? So what Google's trying to do is, reward people that are putting a lot of time into creating good content, right? And that's something that's not anything new. That's something they've said for years at this point, right? It's, make the best content, right, make the best information, and you'll be rewarded, right? So, the studies in search engine land and, all these other tools that are putting out stuff on it, they're only looking at huge sites. So I'd be really interested to see how smaller sites have fared from this that are like, putting real effort into some of the stuff where, the search volume for these keywords are too big or too small for, these big sites to care about.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting thing to bring up. Like my little travel site, Impulsive Wanderlust, has been seeing a pretty nice spike in traffic. Yeah, so that's interesting that you brought up because, like, given the domain authority, for example, an article, we'll say we're writing an article on San Diego resorts. Like, on my site, it's not going to be like I could write an awesome article on my site, but there could be another article on Thrillist about the same topic. But obviously, Google's probably going to favor Thrillist because it's such an established name in the niche. So, do you think that's starting to change?
I think that's what they're trying to fight, right? And there's obviously brand factors that go into it, but they don't want a brand to be able to just churn out almost automatically 10,000 pages and then just starting to get a ton of rankings, right? So a great example would be like putting out a page for cities or something, right, where you have the same text, but like every other sentence has a few words changed depending on what city it is, right? So that's my take on it. And it's something that Google has done over and over again for years, right? As you have low quality, you'll eventually get hit, right? So there's ways for sites to kind of create spikes in traffic, especially big sites by putting out low quality stuff, building out new pages, and it's not sustainable growth, right? And that's one thing we're learning is, even with, I think, Spotify, for example, they have this open.spotify.com domain that was just this, like, all this low quality stuff that just kind of got sent to the index. And then it started getting a bunch of rankings with the domain factors. And then Google finally realized, oh, this isn't going to work, right? And it goes back to the theory of SEO anyways, right? You can game the algorithm and get bumps in traffic, but it's going to be a short-term
sooner or later it's going to
solution,
bite you.
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So
well, that's I mean that's great from a content, at least from my agency perspective. It's seeming like this shortcut of what brands do. They'll go on freelancer sites and pay $10 for a blog post that's just basically just word vomit, just getting content on the site and peppering keywords as they can. It's seeming like that's slowly but surely becoming a thing of the past. Because I can't tell you how many clients I've talked to.
I agree with you. I agree with you a little bit there, but I think you can still find really good freelancers for pretty cheap, right? So it's not necessarily like the
no, I'm not discriminating by any means. Right.
I think it's more.
But, more what I was talking about is like, just brands creating content for the pure sake of creating content, thinking it'll help their rankings.
Oh yeah. So
not trying to trash talking freelancers. I was one of those freelancers, back in the day.
Yeah. So I wasn't. I'm basically saying like stuff, that type of content that sometimes is automated too, I think is an issue, has been for a long time. But like, the stuff where it's like red shoes, we have the best red shoes. Want to find fun red shoes? Check us out. Right. That type of content creation doesn't work anymore.
Right. Well, I think that's a pretty interesting thing to backtrack a little bit to what you said about thin content. I read a pretty interesting article on Neil Patel, and there were a couple of the big takeaways that he saw from his analysis are the sites that took serious hits in traffic were sites that A, had very thin content, and B, weren't refreshing their old content on a daily basis. I think an interesting thing to define here.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the not refreshing content on a daily basis? I mean, that's impossible for a lot of sites to do.
Oh yeah, totally.
So
So I think it's, maybe refreshing looking at one or two of your blog posts or whatever informational content you have on the site and, making a habit out of it. It doesn't have to take super long. A lot of it's just going through and, updating with new statistics, new data, adding new examples where you see fit, just really making the post more timely. Like, at least in the marketing niche, you can have evergreen content, but, you can still update that content all the time. So I know what Neil was saying in this post was, he's got a routine. He's got his writers. They're going through these posts on a daily basis, going through old posts and updating the little things in it. Like, okay, is there another example of a brand doing this tactic that happened very recently? Can we update the data in this to be not from 2015? Just can we make this post more relevant to today and not keep it outdated. And I think, Google at the end of the day likes to see that you're on top of your content. Yeah, and you're making it more timely to the reader. So yeah, I guess to get a little bit actionable here, I want to discuss a couple ways you can update your content, just so you're not just staring at and wondering, okay, what the hell do I do here? So I think a good place to start is especially after the update, take a look at your content and maybe check out the first 5 or so keywords that it's ranking for. And then type those keywords into Google and see what other sites are ranking for those, especially if you take a hit. Who's ranking for those terms on the SERPs right now and what are they doing that you aren't in the content? I think that's a good way to, look at your content critically, and that should really start your analysis and how you should update the post. And I think another thing, I know, Sam, just to echo what you said a little bit earlier, is, reevaluate what questions your content's answering. Like, is the question being asked still totally relevant? Or how has the answer to that question changed? Or is there a better way you can answer that question? Like, for example, how do you conduct keyword research? If you typed up this answer back in 2016, is there a better way to do keyword research now? Is there, are there different tools out there that are better than the tools that worked back in 2016? So yeah, those are just, a couple ways to start. Another thing you can do is, I guess on an overarching level, how does this message in this piece still apply to today's interest? Obviously, Google has no love for outdated content or outdated messaging. For example, if you're writing content on how to use the Vine app, rest in peace, Vine, and how to use Vine for business, that's not doing anyone any good anymore. So that being said, you could either delete the post, redirect it, or maybe even, update it to discuss using TikTok for business purposes. So yeah, those are just a few ways to update. And on a technical level, maybe just consider look into web accessibility guidelines. Like, is your piece is it in line with changing website accessibility? Like, how well does this cater to disabled people? I'll post the link in the write-up here. There's a whole w3.org, a whole list of website accessibility standards. Content creators, pretty much anyone who owns a website should be keeping up with, at least checking in every once in a while for updates and updating the content accordingly. So yeah, those are the big ones. And just, kind of do your own short content audit for each piece of content you have and just make sure it's timely, it answers relevant questions today, and, really just the content's streamlined. I think that kind of segues into thin content. There's always kind of a happy medium. For example, like, some subjects or some questions you could answer in 400 words. Whereas, obviously a 400-word article that answers the question perfectly should probably do a lot better than, a 4,000-word article that just beats around the bush the whole time and is full of fluff. I think, for example, food blogs are, in my opinion, the biggest culprit of this. For example, like, okay, I want a recipe on cornbread. And then, you click on a link and then you get like this 800 to 2,000 word article. It's like, oh yeah, I started making cornbread back in college and, the 90s. And I was born out of New York and I came here and blah, blah, blah. It just beats around the bush for, 500 words. And then I think a lot of that's just, getting caught up in those general statistics that, oh yeah, you have to produce content at a certain length or you're not going to rank. But at the end of the day, that's really not true.
Yeah, I
those
agree
are
with
just a
that.
handful of things you can do to update your content. Yeah, Sam, I don't know if you have anything more to add to that little short list on how to keep your content updated on a normal basis. I think if you just make little goals, update 1 to 2 pieces a day. Maybe devote half an hour just to updating your content, and Google's going to reward you for that.
Yeah, I think you kind of knocked out almost all the opportunities. And the other one that I think the piece that we're missing is, if you think about the general topics out there, right? Like, the example of how to make cornbread. You're not you necessarily, Kevin, but if you're trying to create a cornbread recipe, you're not the first person to write an article about cornbread, right? You're probably not even the first 10,000 person to write an article about cornbread, right? So, once you have this really awesome piece, you need to leverage your business network. You need to leverage people sites that you're familiar with, and you need to be building links to these sites, to these articles that you write, because you need to show the algorithm that, hey, look, this is a good piece of content, and other people also agree with me, right? And that's something that I think a lot of, especially small websites, miss out on. Like, we've got, I know I've been working with this company called Snowy Pines White Labs, and they're a white lab breeder out of Arkansas, I believe. And they have they created a brand new website. They have all this awesome in-depth guides, and Google has really rewarded them, right? And they've had some people, they've had some people linking to them recently, and they actually have this awesome, it's like a puppy cam where they've got a 24-hour cam stream of all their puppies. It's the cutest thing in the world. And they created this website where traditionally this type of search volume for these types of puppies, that's not huge, right? And a lot of their competitors have really basic websites, but Google has just been rewarding them like crazy with because they're putting really strong information about the topic that they're experts in, and other people are showing through linking. Other people are verifying that this information is awesome, right? And it's just the recipe that you need these days to win in search.
Yeah, definitely. And you should definitely send me the link to that website. I want to put it in the write-up here. And I think also you said they're putting a stream of their puppies on the website. That's probably the best possible way you could keep people on a website. If maybe I'm just a sucker for puppy videos, but that's really, really smart. I like that a lot. So we have about 2 minutes left for this segment. I want to just very, very quickly use this last couple minutes to go over really quick here is on fixing thin content. Obviously, nobody likes thin content. As the name implies, thin content can be defined as content that really has little to no value, resolves nothing for the reader, and isn't relevant to why people land on the page. Examples of thin content include duplicate or really just half-heartedly paraphrased or scraped content. A lot of this automatically generated content, I know Sam touched on this earlier. A lot of doorway or category pages can be summed up as thin content, or useless affiliate pages are big ones to look out for. Anyway, so just a couple quick things you can do to sweep your site and pinpoint what's defined as thin content. First of all, just read it. Just use your best judgment here. Read over it really in-depthly. What questions are leading people to this content, and how well are you providing the answers? Be sure to examine the key takeaways, are they valuable? Do you explain the takeaways clearly? And again, I just want to reiterate that longer isn't always better. Really just this, I hate this stat that, it's posted all over the internet. It's just the best ranking content in the top 10 results are, most of them are over 2,500 words. I think that just sends the wrong message that, okay, I have to create content over 25 words every time. That's just not true. Just be sure you're answering the questions very, very thoroughly, and, just eliminate the fluff wherever you can. Okay, and moving on, the next one to use is just run your content through a plagiarizer tool. I know Copyscape's really good for this. That'll just analyze your content and see if you're getting flagged and need to do any rewrites. And also, if you've got category pages or those doorway pages we mentioned earlier, if they're really thin, category pages are not meant to be super, super in-depth. So, if they're really thin, just go ahead and no index those. Because they're honestly just doorway. They're leaning to other pages. They're not providing tons of value anyway. Okay, so that is going to wrap up just a few things to do about thin content. We can probably cover this more in depth in a future episode. But yeah, so that'll do it for today's show. I just want to thank everyone for listening in. And to stay tuned, we are very fortunate. We are hoping to welcome in the head of global marketing from SEMrush out of the St. Petersburg branch, Olga Adrianko. We should have her in next week, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And that should do it for today's episode. You're listening to another episode of This Week in Marketing, brought to you by the San Diego chapter of the American Marketing Association. Thanks again for listening in, and
Can
we'll see
you
you next time.
imagine a world without children? A world where children don't play, or dream, or imagine.
At St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, we're working every day to find cures for diseases that strike down children, because we can't imagine a world without children. Can you?
Finding cures, saving children. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. To learn how you can help, log on to our website, stjude.org.
Tired of presentations with no impact, no inspiration, and no traction? Do dull speakers have you and your team disengaged and distracted by smartphones? Christopher McAuliffe brings energy, insights, and 2 decades of experience, delivered with punch, humor, and heart. Your team will leave energized, uplifted, and with a sense of purpose. Visit ChristopherMcAuliffe.com to bring some heat to your next speaking engagement. McAuliffe. ChristopherMcAuliffe.com.
Take a break from politics. Tune in and learn something. WS Radio shows are worth your time and are filled with tips and advice. Add us to your lunch routine, and we'll give you a meal for your mind.
Kinja Dixon was crowned the #1 sales executive through hard work, deep thinking, and the revelation of universal talk laws. He now wants to share these lessons with you. Universal talk laws are what you need to know and use in business and at home to have successful and effective conversations. Kinja Dixon shares his wisdom, action plans, and wealth. Each book comes with a chance to win $10,000. Find Universal Talk Laws at kinjadixon.com.
Do you want to be a professional coach? Are you in business trying to make a real difference with people you manage or work with? Have you started a coaching practice that isn't quite getting off the ground? Get the skills you need to be a successful coach today with the Coaches Training Program from Accomplishment Coaching. The Coaches Training Program will show you how to help others focus and be more fulfilled. Whether you want to improve your company's bottom line or create a thriving coaching practice, Accomplishment Coaching can give you the distinctions and practices you need to coach others effectively today. Accomplishment Coaching has spent 6 years developing a cutting-edge coaches training program that will have you ready to coach people professionally in just 12 months, and you don't have to take time off work to do it. To find out more about the Coaches Training Program, just call 1-888-548-6813. That's 1-888-548-6813.